That was good. Yeah.
It was great. Thank you, Dina. All who's shared so far. I see Diego and Matt chomping at the bit. Who wants to go first?
Should be me. Thank you,
Yes.
Divan.
Thank you.
I getting you, Matt. Sorry. Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Diego, and I'm right now in the mountains of Medellin, South America. And I think the story I will tell is kind of strange, weird, because it's about corn. And it was a nice connection that we have last week. Why corn? Because our business is farm to table model. We start 8 years ago. We focus on vegetables and market gardener. And from the beginning, having corn in our fields didn't make any sense, because how can we compete with these enormous monocultives in our country? So we thought at the beginning, it is not clear, it's not intelligent to cultivate corn just for small families. But as the time passed, we start to discover and try to get born again the previous seeds, what we call it here in Latin America, the native seeds of corn, which are colorful, taste perfectly. So we start to do like a tourism idea. It's like when they visit our farms, like, look, you know that we have red corn, and for most of Colombians and I guess South America, we forgot how the corn used to look like, not just white and yellow, perfectly yellow. So last week it happened something very special. We have a collaboration with a new entrepreneur which takes the corn and produce the arepa. Arepa is like the most traditional food in our region, based on corn. It's like our grandmas used to take the corn, produce it is very slowly. And it was beautiful because the connection was with a school. So small children from 7 to 8 years came to take the corn, put it in go to produce the arepas, and then they eat it with so much love. So it was perfectly, because at the beginning we say, why, when we try to convert to enable people to go to a better food system, we thought about vegetables, always vegetables. But last week I say, why we haven't thought about it? Let's use the corn. So the connection goes when last week, at the end of the week, after this corn party, we were invited to work with politicians on Medellin about how can we enhance the regenerative culture in Medellin. And I was set beside the chief of these corn companies, which are huge in Colombia. And we start to talk about if it is possible to have these monocultures of corn in the same yields and with same expectations that they have. Obviously, it will be different, but we have a different way to measure these profits. But the good thing is that he was so intrigued and curious about the way we are cultivating our regenerative corn, that we have next week a meeting with the engineer staff leading of this company to understand the way we produce food. So that's a really good connection. We forgot the corn, then we bring it back to the table, and it is making the connections with important people in our country, not important, but relevant to get this on a scale, which at the end is our objective, is how can we came this idea of regenerative to scale in Latin America. That's my story. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Diego. I want to make sure we get Matt into our group. Max, I'm sorry. There we go. All right. Into our screen. So if you want to chime in, I saw Matt next, and then Max is now on screen. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Matt from PepsiCo, calling in from, I wish I was on the mountains of Medellin. I'm the mountains of Dallas, the plains, it's nice and cool here though, finally. I want to share two very brief stories that both have, I think, the same theme of the power of those connections, collaborations, the relational infrastructure that enabled us to pivot or to continue being able to serve those who are most vulnerable, particularly these two examples during the pandemic. The first in the US through our Food for Good social enterprise, which is a program where we use PepsiCo's capabilities to source, pack, deliver nutritious meals to kids, particularly when those kids are not in school. And that's a need every single day. But then when the pandemic hits and school closes, those kids, many of whom who depend on the meals at school, didn't have access to meals, in particular in rural communities, where as schools began to stand up ability to come pick up meals at the school, that was not always feasible in rural communities. But through PepsiCo's connections with UPS, we had infrastructure of how we could begin to ship packages. With our connections with Baylor's Collaborative on Hunger and Poverty and USDA and USDA's Travel Relations Council, they reached out and began to say, okay, we've got a thought. What if we shipped meals directly to the doorsteps of these children who can't come to the meals? And the ability to quickly stand up an infrastructure to begin to ship, we ended up, together with a number of other partners, about 40 million meals to kids during the pandemic, directly to these kids' doorsteps, including into remote tribal nations where they, for quarantine, we're not allowing anybody to come in, but through the trust and the relationships that have been built previously, we were able to get the much needed food to these communities and directly to these children. And the other quick example I'd share is in Mexico with our Quaker team has worked for years with an amazing partner in Mexico called Un Kilo de Ayuda. And Un Kilo, in going regularly to the same communities for decades, has built that kind of relational infrastructure and the ownership and the support by the moms in the communities that as they surfaced back through to our Quaker team, the need to have a nutritional supplement in particular that was designed to address moderate acute malnutrition. Our R&D team was able to create a supplement that added onto what Un Kilo was already doing. And then through the pandemic, despite all of the different supply chain and logistical hurdles and challenges, able to continue to get distribution of those biscuits to those children that were suffering from malnutrition, particularly these kids 1 to 5 that needed to continue to receive that kind of protein supplement. So those are two examples that I think are ones that I'm really excited about how PepsiCo could bring the one part that we know, whether logistics or R&D, but as a very small part of a much bigger relational collaboration and network, that if we can build off of those relationships and the local community expertise, that's where we want to try to start.
Thank you, Matt. We've heard some wonderful connections, collaborations, and Max, oh, there he is. I see you. Thank you so much. You want to chime in?
Thank you for according me this opportunity. I'm in the hotel lobby. Sorry if you can hear a little bit of feedback, but I hope I'm loud and clear. Yeah, so I'm coming from Zambia, which is in the southern part of Africa. And I'm just going to share two perspectives, being a young person and having worked with farmers, youth farmers to per se, and how food systems have been impacted with COVID-19. My story will be based on the supply chain of food when we had lockdowns. It came to our attention that young people who would grow food would not have access market to deliver the foodstuffs. You'd find that there were restrictions in terms of movement. So like if they produce their food, how are they going to deliver it to the market? Like mostly our urban markets are heavily loaded with food that comes from the rural. So we could see supermarkets running out of our local indigenous foods. That even affected our diets. Where we used to eat 3 times a day during COVID times, we did maybe 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day because lack of food availability. And I'm also going to bring in a scenario of an adolescent girl who posed a very good story to me by saying, Max, I don't see myself getting more attracted being at home. I miss being in school because we had free meals being given there. Like we had free porridge. And then I asked this girl to say, why is it a porridge that you follow at school or education? Then she just told me to say, at least at school I can find something to eat compared to home, because where I'm coming from a family where we're about 12 children. So we have seen how food systems has really affected the supply chain uh, from production to consumption, the supply chain, the transportation. Yeah, that has really been affected. And equally myself, having worked with young people and myself, I have seen a challenge, because we were not having availability of indigenous foods to choose from, which would nourish our bodies, and that has also posed a great food insecurity situation at country level. I think for now, let me pause here with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Max, for sharing. Awesome. Anyone else want to add anything else? I know sometimes you'll hear something and it'll spark something else for you. No? Awesome. Great. All right. So we'll pivot to the next part of our dialogue is really getting into those three questions. I know the table guests have seen them. Maybe we can pop them in the chat for the other guests who've joined us. I will read them really quickly. And so really looking at these guiding questions, thinking about the possibilities, challenges, and learnings. You've touched on some of these already in your stories of connection, collaboration, and partnerships. And so thinking through those 4 C's, as we talked about, right? The COVID, climate, conflict, and cost. And these, I guess we anticipate maybe picking one of the 3 questions, because we could be here for 4 days. I'm really talking about all the wonderful things that we're doing to promote this type of transformational change, right? So the type of change that will be longstanding. I'm always thinking about 7 generations from now. What story will they tell about us? And hopefully it'll be a different story. So the 3 questions, in the context of some of the most urgent challenges, climate, conflict, COVID, and now cost, what are the possibilities that are most encouraging to you? The first question. Second question, what are the challenges you are facing to realize those possibilities? And the fourth, what transformation you are learning is necessary either in yourself, your organization, or your community in order to bring that possibility into existence. So who wants to go first? I think I really want to kind of reverse. I think what Max was sharing just about the context of what's happening there. And I think you might be off. Yeah, there you go. Can you hear me now? Good. Okay. Someone's coming off. I have a little bit of a delay. Now I'm having what Nikki had going. Okay, so if you want to chime in, please just come off your microphone in no particular order. If you want to jump in and answer any of those 3 questions. Diego's chomping at the bit.
I can jump in. I'll happily jump in. One of the things, when I think about what this moment needs, right? I work very grassroots. My work is really anchored in public institutions and rebuilding the food systems in schools and hospitals and prisons. One of the things that resonates so much is the notion that what brought us to this point in history is not what's going to take us into the future. Right? The truth of that just keeps revealing itself to me. And I think the lesson there is that we have to be brave enough to let go of the things that we have to let go of, right? And that list is broad. It's like comfort and convenience, it's profit margins, it's all sorts of things. But the structures and the frameworks of the previous versions of our world are just not going to fit. And I find myself most irate when I see people attempting you know what I mean, to make old connections work amidst the like flames of our new reality, right? I'm like, stop, we have to stop. We have to be smart and brave and aware enough to recognize the world that's around us and that things have to change. The systems that existed previously are fundamentally unsustainable, right? They cannot continue now, especially that the world has thrown us and continues to throw us all these curveballs, right? Here in Canada, one of the big sort of 5-alarm things that we're thinking about is the state of our water, right? Because you know what I mean, the majority of our country is surrounded by water and the fish inside of it and the ecosystems, and it's getting increasingly dramatic. And what are we doing here? Are we paying any attention? We're not paying nearly enough attention. And I can only do so much yelling and screaming from the ground, right? And we like, listen, they're smart people. David Suzuki is on it. You know, they're smart people advising the right people. That's not my job. But the thing that I think is, I think the problem that I encounter is that sometimes people can get so swallowed up by how big the challenges are and how numerous the challenges are that what becomes easier is to just like go back to bed, right? Head under covers and continue watching television, like, you know, just not even engage. And there's like a paralysis that happens there. And one of the things that I find so exciting and hopeful about the context of food is that because of its universality, there's always a way to engage. Right? Even a 3-year-old can find a way to engage. We can figure this out, right? We can create programs. We can find ways for individual people to do one thing. This is one of those scenarios where doing one little thing will in fact help, right? Not every scenario is like this, but I believe the rebuild and the strengthening of our food systems at regional and global levels is in fact one of these things. So to me, what the fact that we can rally everybody, right? Because I've seen it, and I know you all see it in sort of smaller ways in your own communities, with just a bit of thoughtfulness. And I think, as Dina was suggesting, we organize ourselves together. I think we can really, there's a lot of possibility, right? Because people, the empty spaces are becoming more and more and more, right? People need some answers. People need some solutions and some fresh ideas. Like Diego said, how about we just grow this better corn the way you do? How about we, right? Can we just do this? Reconnect ourselves to better tradition, better nutrition, all of that. So yes, that is what gets me excited to keep going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shasha, for
Thanks.
sharing. Diego, where are you next?
Yes, I think that the possibility for us, my dream is finally to make a younger farmer from Colombia, from Latin America, to decide by choice to become a farmer, not by obligation. And I think we are very close to that possibility because finally these challenges that we have to face, this dream is everything is getting connected in the C's that we talk about. For example, the conflict and especially the cost associated with conventional agriculture is finally making farmers to knock our doors and say, hey, there is really a way to produce food without using these toxic chemicals, and we are proving that it is possible. So I think the main challenge here is how can we combine everything, articulate all the community in two major changes, I guess. And as you say, transformational and change, not only change, you don't like that word, but it's transformational change. So how can we connect all these people around two major, I think, transformational changes? The first one is, how can I say, investors, stakeholders, institutions need to rethink the way we understand efficiency. So in the conventional world, the efficiency and how you are scored if you have a good project or if you will have profit in the future is related to short term and especially on specialization. So a specialization goes to efficiency, and specialization in our field in crops is monoculture. And how can you be more efficient by producing more with less cost? This is a completely change of paradigm, the way we will evaluate these projects in the future. It is more related to not efficiency by specialization, but maybe efficiency by location, because we will be closer to the source. So this is I think that's the way we need to learn in the community, in investors, in the community in general, to tackle new projects and thinking that there is a different way to understand this economic paradigm. And the second is related to customers. I think in order to get these farmers to love what they do and to decide that they want to become a farmer, we need to pay them better. What I think the best thing that we did in Siembra Viva during these 10 years is to create the cost starting by the farmer, not by the market. So what we did is like, okay, after a lot of pilots, a lot of testing, we understood new farmers will join the fields again with two conditions. One, they need at least two minimum wage, not one. In the farm, in the countryside, we need at least two. And the other thing is they need technology. Once we bring those conditions together, better payment and technology together to make this efficiency come around, they will join and they will be happy to become a farmer. So at the end of the day, the price that the community will pay for this food maybe will be higher, but will be fair, will be ethical. And that's a transformation that we need in our community, thinking that the price that we are offering to them is the price that pays younger farmers to come to the countryside, and instead of growing cocaine, maybe they will start growing food. So that's my dream. New farmers to join the fields again with decision, with choice, not because of obligations or they don't have any other option to pay the rent and to feed themselves during the weekend.
Thank you, Diego. Dina, were you in the queue?
Yes, I had some thoughts, but I was thinking about the cocaine going into something else. It's going to be great convincing them. I'm sure they're thinking, well, we have a lot of, unfortunately, farmers as such in all countries. But no, actually, my thought was towards one of our stories that maybe, so we're in Tempest countries, we have the same projects being replicated, and one of them was Lebanon. And I don't know if you know, but the 4 C's really hit Lebanon, right? COVID, climate, conflict, and cost after the bombing that took place over there. And it was such a challenge that even when our project was done, so we had a beautiful cookbook ready with a section on how to start and scale your culinary business there. And the World Food Program was scared. Like, you mean you're going to launch a cookbook with proceeds going to us with 90, almost 80% of the ingredients people cannot buy in the country? So it makes us all take a pause, people in my office, thinking, what are we really doing? Is it enough? I mean, we're trying to think together of solutions, but is it enough? So I loved what you said, Josh. Now, we definitely need to go back and learn from whatever we do next cannot be what we've done in the past. So we try to support the women in Lebanon in different ways, and we can talk about that some other time. But I just wanted to share that it's not necessarily that what we're doing, even though we're very happy to have done it, it was not necessarily the right thing. And it takes, I think, a lot to stop and pause and say, this is not the right way of feeding people or making sure that the world's a good place for farmers and anybody else in the country and the world. So I hope that was enough, Devon. Yeah?
Thank you, Dana.
You're
you
welcome.
so much. Max, Matt, Kim, who wants to jump in next?
I'll jump in. So many different thoughts on this. So I will be brief. I'm honoring because I love hearing from everybody. I think that a theme of what I am thinking is the importance of, because there's so many different areas of this we could talk about, but the importance of talking to, not just talking about. I think too often we're talking about people that we haven't actually talked to directly. We don't know their names, and we're talking about them to use those stories or use those numbers to accomplish certain ends, and it may actually not be reflective of the real needs or the real impact. And I think so in terms of transformational, like a really practical step for us is elevating qualitative assessment in addition to quantitative. So Diego, as you were talking about, measuring success of programs, talking about something like efficiency in the first place is a great point, right? Because relationships aren't efficient oftentimes. So how do you ensure an intentional balance? We have a commitment together with a partnership with Care She Feeds the World to reach 5 million female farmers and their families. And I can tell you a lot of things about the numbers, but we also want to elevate directly through to my performance evaluation. I'm not just saying like, let's kind of talk about, but like, what is the actual survey feedback directly from the female farmers and their families of what they're saying in terms of the impact of the program, and that being just as critical in terms of giving that power truly to the communities that we're saying that we are seeking to serve well. Because again, I think we're too often talking about without actually talking to, without listening to, or without being willing to cede that power or the accountability to that. And another brief example I was mentioning just this morning was the recent White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. And I want to celebrate so many amazing things that I heard and themes and conversations, but one of my frustrations from it was how often, it was great, let's take the positive of how many times speakers were talking about the importance of centering on those with lived experience. But my frustration was how infrequently it was a speaker with lived experience. And that our definition of expert, for example, is still one that presumes a certain position of power or background or expertise that doesn't include direct lived experience. So in the short term, I think raising voices and giving ourselves accountability to hearing from. Longer term, I think it requires ownership and direct control and engagement. Board seats, and there's a lot of other places where that kind of conversation can go. But I think we need to talk to more than just talking about.
Awesome. You all are so inspiring. I'm trying to take notes and be present and do all because I want to make sure I'm capturing. So grateful that it's being recorded. Kim or Max, did you want to chime in?
Yes, now I'm outside. I guess it's much cooler. Yeah. So for me, my contribution will be seeing various opportunities and challenges of how the food systems have been affected. Um, when you look at the world's population, young people are approved to be so many. So how can we utilize young people into these food systems approach, having various interventions in ensuring agriculture is more appealing to young people? Let us bring in intervention and strategies to make agriculture appealing. Let us make it look more successful. Like being a farmer is not only, it's not only meant for the old people, but also young people can take part into it, and making sure that young people can also make a living out of it. Because the biggest employer now in the near future we're going, it's no longer going to be IT or science. It's going to be agriculture, because we'll have a world to feed. And also utilizing understanding that young people should not be beneficiaries but stakeholders or potential stakeholders into the food systems approach, because we can have all these good policies, we can have all these good roadmaps and frameworks on how we can curve challenges surrounding food systems. But if we're forgetting the biggest component, which is the young people, how can we involve them? How can we give them the skill? Other young people, like most of the young people I've interacted, what they need is a skill. It is not about the finances that they need, but it's the skill that they will remain with it. And once you give them the skill, believe you me, we are seeing a system change approach where we'll grow food for not only a consumption but also as a business. We'll no longer have to see importations of food like we saw during the COVID pandemic. Some of the foodstuffs could not come into Zambia because we normally import some of the fruits from South Africa. So you'd realize if we impact young people in skills of how we can grow our own fruits, our own vegetables, our own livestock, we would see a better food systems approach in the country, and even in the region, even in the world at large, because we have got the energies, we've got the ideas. What we need are the platforms and how we can work with the current system to improve the food system situation. I think that's my submission.
Thank you so much, Max. So many connections here I'm hearing. Kim, are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just build on a couple of themes, and starting, I think, with Diego's point around the cost, right, and what we're paying producers. And I think from my perspective and the incentives, right, not only incentives at the producer and farm level, but the incentives within our organizations to bring about the behavior change. So, when I think of, folks that are boots on the ground that have to have new behaviors, new trainings, new capabilities, like Max was just talking about. It's how do we support and provide those incentives, not only by paying more for them implementing the more sustainable and also regenerative practices, but then to Matt's point, which is those that are in charge, the business, right, across the business, not just sustainability leaders, but all business leaders, on how are we incentivizing them to support those changes. I think a couple of things, which is matching up the support within companies to incentivize their folks by how they're paid, right, and how they're bonused out. And to Matt's point around delivering the impact on the ground, are the programs that companies that are promoting delivering that impact, and how is that in the bonus structure at companies around the world? And for us, the way we're looking at it is in terms of transforming the products that we offer and sell, and also tying that to performance reviews and long-term compensation, right? So you think about how much of our portfolio is going to products that are made with regenerative materials, how much of our portfolio is about nutritious and sustainable, and then is it being accessible and affordable for our customers, so that our customers, we're in the B2B space, can also incentivize that change that we seek. And I think the excitement about that is also lining up those connection points, because when you're having true systems change, folks got to start rowing in the same way, right? Otherwise, we'll be sort of circling around in the boat. And I think what I'm excited about, and start to see those connections, but also those incentives lining up across different types of food systems and value chains.
Thank you, Kim. Wow, just wow. Thank you all so much for sharing. Again, we have these, 3 questions. If any of those 3 you feel like you wanted to add more, or something you didn't get a chance to touch on, we can drop them in the chat again. But I know sometimes when others are sharing, it may spark something else for you. For anyone else want to share? I think I can see everybody here. Kim?
I can say something, because maybe it's a bit different. So I just wanted to share this. So I have a farm, olive farm. And so when we had the pandemic happen, we were on military lockdown in Jordan, which meant that none of us could leave. And our supermarkets didn't have enough supplies. So you had to, if you could, you would walk to a supermarket that may or may not have the basic supplies you had. So actually, during the pandemic, our farmers were the one who ate, because they already were self-sustained. They were really okay. And a lot of us who were thinkers after, we started asking them, like, how can we make sure we're okay and surviving, those who live in the city in the nice schools and nice houses? How do we survive? Because this is an indication of what's going to happen in the near future. So definitely, without a doubt, we need our farmers. But also, there's a lot of learnings from all of them. And also, when we talked about healthcare, somebody mentioned healthcare. That's also true to those who actually know how to use all the ingredients and nutrients that are actually very healthy and good for us to actually take care of ourselves, because the healthcare system also here got destroyed. So how to basically just, if you get sick, what to do, and other things like that. So I just wanted to say that but yes, definitely they need to be paid better. We will work on that. But they are also, there's a lot to learn from them. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Kim, were you adding something?
Oh, I think I was drawn to I think it's the last question, right? What transformation are you learning is necessary either in yourself, your organization, or community? And I kind of I'd like to get the other table members' thoughts around that behavior change piece, right? I think I struggle personally, but even within the organization, which is priority setting, right? Which is what's the single one thing that we're going to do today or this week to help deliver a sustainable and just food system, right? And so I think about it, and you've got too many things on your plate, right, so to speak. And what do you stop and what do you start? And I think Jasna was talking earlier about that just one thing, right? What's that just one thing that we're going to do, and creating that as a habit rather than, and what do we stop? So that's one of the things in terms of like, what are others thinking about that? And not only for themselves, but also within their organization. Because I think there's a lot of practices we actually have to stop, right? So that we can give space to actually do those things that are going to bring about the systems change and behavior change we want.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else wanted? Thank you, Joshua, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really responding to stuff that I've heard from Kim and Matt. As somebody on the ground, receiving and asking for funding, I'm really encouraged to hear you both talk about rethinking evaluation metrics, because this is something that makes me want to like burn things down, right? Like, because it is so crazy that people on the ground steeped in the reality of what's going on have to do all these contortions and manipulations to our requests for money to fit into the prescribed kind of offering from somebody like, and to be very frank with you, whose like brother or son heard about regenerative agriculture at the cottage. You know, and I like, it's not founded in any real expertise, with all respect. Right, the people on the ground's voices are not being included in the way the money cast out is offered. And so I would really encourage you both, with the power that you have in your context, to really open up and consider bringing people from the ground into those conversations about what success looks like, right? And where your money is going to be most impactful. I'm not sure that people who spend a lot of time in offices can really understand where the money can be most used on the ground, right? Again, with all love and affection, so much of the walls that I come across are the fact that the money and the resources that are allegedly available for the work that I want to do just comes with so many strings and inappropriate contexts. Right, and shrouded in accountability or whatever other thing we want to talk about, the responsible use of money. It would be awesome if we could understand responsible use of money as respecting a community's knowledge first to take care of themselves and to know what they need, and to just give them some resources to do that, loosen up the ask, and just really understand that people in community, it's easy to find the leaders, right, connect to what they're doing and just put more wind behind their backs, right, and support those efforts. You don't need to create a new thing. Clearly, this is a soapbox issue for me. So thank you for listening and for the opportunity.
Well, I can respond. I don't know if Matt wants. So go ahead, Diego. You go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to jump there because from the ground is different. No, it's just telling that I think we need to build resilience. Maybe that's the word in institutions, because once they are learning, at least in Latin America and Colombia, they're learning about pivots. They are learning about long-term relationships. But once we hit reality, those learnings goes to other sides. So I will give you an example. Why Siembra Viva didn't achieve the yields that we're expecting 2 years ago? And we answered, oh, sorry, we have two storms, and usually those hailstorms in the history is every 10 years, and now we are having it every 6 months. So it is difficult to achieve these yields, transforming, creating a new technology, but at the same time, we have the institutions asking for results. So I think it's the need to create this long-term view, but adding to this long-term view that we need to learn together. It's not like you produce results, I evaluate, and then we decided we continue on. It's like, okay, we got in this bus together. We are learning this step by step. We are learning that climate change is getting crazy and we are having a hail every 6 months. So now we need a different investment to try to resist this every 6 months health. So how can we build a trusted relationship once it will be very difficult to hit the initial plannings and the initial data. So yeah, I just want to jump on what Josh said.
Thank you, Diego. Kim, were you, or Matt, I see your
Yeah, I'll just, maybe I'll frame it in the sense of encouragement for others, because it's encouragement for me is there are a lot of things I know we need to and can do to build a better infrastructure of qualitative evaluation, of direct engagement. I mean, it takes a lot of resourcing, right? If you got a small team that's dispersing funding to be able to have relationships on the ground or find the right ways to make those kinds of connections. But we can start right now without that being complicated. For example, we are asking our team, our direct team, and then any of our partners that we're working with, as part of any kind of site visit, program evaluation, just simply like starting with a blank sheet of paper, which direct beneficiary of the program did you talk to? What did they say about the program? I mean, these aren't very difficult steps in a process. Yes, we need to systematize that, and we've got steps in that as well that we can try to do to begin to equalize some of the qualitative and quantitative measures in this process. But Joshua, to your point, like if you, or Diego, to yours also, if you look back, we can very clearly say the programs that have the biggest impact, both in terms of the true impact we're hoping to see to be stewards of the funds, and then the ability to communicate about those, are in those where we have the relationships and the strength of partnership. So if we actually want the ROI, we need to make this kind of investment and begin to do it right now and begin to do it today, even if all of our systems aren't fully in place like we'd like for them to be. So we're trying to start and make those direct connections with partners, and then continue to allow that to evolve the balance of those impact measures, Joshua, because I think ultimately the point is, what is success? And then how do we dial all the way back to right now? Because I find, let me just be honest, far too often, the quantitative impact measurement evaluation data requirements are a sort of tool, a hammer of power that is not even then often used by the funder. It's said we need this to establish some nature of, like you said, sort of perceived. I'm not trying to say don't measure it quantitatively. I'm all for that. But if you ask the questions, you require somebody on the front line of a disaster, as you're saying, Diego, to spend time doing that, and then it's not even reviewed or used as part of the decision-making process by the funder, it's unacceptable. What is the point? So we've got to wire the right questions to the right data so we can make the best decisions, but it's not always data. It's also, as we're saying, deeply embedded in the relationships.
Yes, Matt.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to hear this kind of talk coming from the PepsiCo Foundation. Thank you.
Isn't it exciting? Thank you, Matt.
Josh, I can give you some hope as well. I'll do it from the beginning part, right? And we call it participatory and community engagement design. So that's in terms of utilizing the local partners and the local folks before we even go into a community to actually identify and sit on the ground around a table, right? To hear about what their needs are and bring that into the designing process of a project. And pretty much every program that I've been a part of at different companies across the board are doing that. Not enough are doing it. We need more doing it, right? And also, we also need, you got to build the trust, right? So sort of entering into a community and finding the right partners in that community that already have that trust, or the change makers, is also takes a bit of time and some process. But some examples that I can give you in terms of, there is hope out there, which is we're in a number of communities. I'll mention India again, but they came to us and they wanted clean water. They were spending a lot of time, obviously, walking to the source to try to get fresh water. And so as a result of that, we partnered with the community and those leaders and the farmers to actually build water treatment plant that's for fresh water for that community and design it in a way that's sustainable for them, right? So that somebody there is running it. There was co-investment across the line, right? So everybody brought a little bit to the table. And, you know, we have multiple examples of that where folks come to our boots on the ground and ask for things. And then we think about, okay, how can we help make that a reality? So duly noted, total champion for that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Kim. I saw Dina in the queue, and if anyone else wants to get in the queue, let me know.
Sure. So I loved what Matt and Kim said, and that's amazing. I'm going to give you a different perspective. I sit on the board of Her Majesty's initiatives. That means, or nonprofit, she gets the majority of the money. So what we learned as board members that we need to actually make sure that we sit down with other organizations that are smaller or initiatives that are smaller so that we can actually start getting some of the funding and working with you. So my advice is, in case it doesn't work out, by actually sending, because the due diligence process is really challenging when you're new organizations or nonprofits. So if you could work with anybody they've worked with before, maybe pitch that in, maybe that's another way of getting that kind of money that you need. And I'm happy to support, I mean, in any way. And I hope that support, it's usually not an easy thing. I know, I've been there too, but if I can do anything, Josh, I love what you're doing. So it's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. So I'm hearing those connections, those partnerships, those potential partnerships, those potential collaborations surfacing, and really just championing. Like, we have champions at all levels who are fighting the good fight. So I want to make sure that we are paying attention to the chat too, right? Like, there's some great things happening in the chat. Folks are offering their introductions and resources and things. So thank you so much. Please continue to do that. So of those three questions, I just want to offer a quick recap of what I think I heard. And maybe if I missed something or it sparked something else, we have a few minutes left yet. A couple of things that stuck with me were around this idea of self-reliance and this collective sustainability and resilience. Like, what does that mean? There were some examples of strategies on how we get there. This idea of paying farmers well to begin with, rather than having to pay them for their crops, right? Like, the ideas surfaced throughout that process. Another idea around learning and honoring that this youth innovation and the wisdoms of the elders. I heard some things around that, like looking forward to look back, making sure that we're learning, but also really shaking things up a bit, right? And challenging systems when they need to be, sometimes dismantling them altogether. I know I have some dismantlers in this group. And also thinking about this idea of investments and incentivizing this work. Of course, we're in the context of thinking about what is our return on our investment always, but how we quantify that may be different. It may be really thinking through the value of data and research, and how are we coupling that with our lived experience and what we in our community call community-based research. How do we marry that, right? And show that value in a different way. And is it enough? Was something that I heard, like, is it enough? And continuing the question that this idea of just one thing, and how do we foster the type of behavior change that we want to see, and really starting to think about the infrastructure, the investments in infrastructure and the investments in relationships. And I did also take note of Matt's term, and I will give you credit for it if I ever use it again. This idea, and someone put it in the chat too. Now I have to find it in my notes. Relational infrastructure is what the term that you use. So that's what I'm coming away with. If there's any other last thoughts or ideas before we break into the small groups, we do have more time. Time is temporal, right? We are, again, in this construct of time and space. But this is very much an organic conversation. I have learned so much, and I can't wait to hear from the other folks who are in kind of in the audience about what we do next. Anyone?
Just a thank you. This has been amazing. Really good to learn from everybody. But what I'm going to take is the talking to people, definitely, as somebody who's Muslim in the Arab world. Believe me, I've been talked about enough times. So, and somebody who's working in 10 plus countries and growing, I learned that I have done the same. So maybe we're not that different after all, you know? So definitely go and take that in. But also really as a take-home message is that I love this and I'm so grateful to be part of it. So we look forward to supporting and being with you always in whatever you need. So thank you. And you've done a great job as always, Stefan.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you so much. So much gratitude. Anyone else? Taking away. What are you taking away? We're not done. We're not. By no means are we done. And there's some great ideas and, like I said, resources in the chat. So glad this is being recorded because I have so much to research coming away from this.
Yeah, Divan.
Sure.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is about, again, trust. I think trust is the critical money that we can exchange between institutions, farmers, and food and connections. And I think trust, from what I heard about Kim and Matt, is based on the relationship and in the process. It's not the result. I think if we finally can, when we sit together with the institutions and we are clear that we can create trust based on the process, but not only on results, I think we can create a different connections there. And I think that's my learning point. And for our experience, we have investors that have experience on doing investment, and definitely you can see the difference. They are long-term approach, they are boots in the ground, they follow up, and we build extremely great connections based on trust, but especially because of the process. And when we have some difficulty in the past is related to those investors that are not connected, related to the process, but to the results. And I think that's the key. That's my lesson here. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Diego. Awesome. So I'm thinking through, and please others chime in. What I'm experiencing is this idea that we're being futuristic, right? We're thinking about the future, but we're also very grounded in the present. And as I listen to each of you think about your work and your ability, again, to that last question, Kim, that Kim kind of started to answer for us, of, excuse me, I should have gotten some tea. What transformation are you learning is necessary either within yourself, your organization, or your community in order to bring that possibility into existence? And so we've heard a little bit from Dina, a little bit from Kim. I even think Matt talked a little bit about ways you can shake things up a little bit. Any others want to chime in? Oh, did someone come off their mic? No, Kim, is that you?
I'll give you one example, just since we're supposed to be sitting around a table, right? I started, I think it was last year, it was through another course I was doing, but sort of habits I wanted to stop and those that I wanted to start. And one of the things I noticed is, and this is around my relationship with on the go, right? And coffee. And I had all these beautiful mugs in my cupboard, and I would always go to the to-go mug, right? The to-go one. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to choose a different mug every day that has a story behind it and also makes me happy and makes me smile. And the first thing I'm going to do is have a cup of coffee at my kitchen counter, right? Sitting and thinking about, okay, how do I want my day to look like at the end? And so I'm going to share my mug to today. I don't know if you can see it. It's joyful, right? Which a friend of mine sent me this during the pandemic. And it was one of those, and now every time I pull that mug, I think of her and it makes me happy.
Thank you, Kim. I have quite the collection of mugs now too. And they have a story, right? The story is so important. Thank you for that. Anyone else? What are you learning about transformation within yourself, your organization, or your community?
I will, if I may. Something that is really creeping up, and a lot of what I've heard from Diego, I feel like we share experiences being very much on the ground in the work that we do in community. But I have realized that my colleagues, the rest of us who are so entrenched at this level, also as tired and all of those things as we are, there is a moment where we also have to realize that we have answers and we have resources. Yes, maybe historically they've not been listened to or appreciated or recognized and all of that. But a lesson that I keep repeating internally to myself is that sitting here in a position that says that big business and corporations have no place at the table and just get out of here and let people on the ground deal with it. Thank you very much. That's not gonna create the change that we need to see. Right? We need bigger change. We need more people around the table, and we need a bigger pile of resources to do this. And so I am constantly reminding myself to take a breath and not necessarily, you know what I mean, get ready to upturn the table and burn everything down, which can sometimes be my instinct when I get frustrated with things. But because if people are ready to listen, I have that hot bulleted list. I've been practicing it for the last 18 years, right? And so if somebody is finally ready to listen to the pitch that I have, you know, or being about why should we care about how we feed students and sick people and prisoners, if people are ready, I am ready to talk and to remember that the experts on the ground, like this could be our moment, right? This could be our moment.
Joshua, yes.
So maybe you know, maybe there's something to lean into there. Thanks.
We know very well what we need. We're the masters of our own destiny. Did I lose Max? I don't know if he's still on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
There he
just
is.
my
Thank you.
contribution. Yeah, just my contribution towards the transformation. I with the experience that I've seen in the community is investing in local-led solutions and ensuring that we have all these systems approach should have the all-inclusive approach is investing more in local-led solutions because you'd realize that it is important that the people we could be advocating for should also be part of the solution themselves. And there are various learnings that we can invest in from the locals themselves as we be coming up with the strategies or the frameworks that will change our food systems approach. That should also focus on local-led solutions because the people that are facing the actual problem should be part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Max. You all got my juice. You got me fired up now. This is the part I love. Living in the solution, right? Matt, were you chiming in?
Yeah, I'll share a really brief story that has nothing to do with PepsiCo, but I read it in, I believe it's National Geographic, and has been very sort of formative to how a lot of what I'm saying and how we're trying to think about this. It was about a remote village that was placed right. It was right next to a river that during flood season the village would be completely isolated. When the water lowered, they built a handmade bridge and had access to schools and to market. And then every year the waters would rise and wash out the handmade bridge, and they would be isolated and have to do it again. And a group from Engineers Without Borders went and visited this village, understood what the needs were, and built a bridge that could withstand the rising waters. And to me, that's a visual of what we're trying to do. It's not saying we're here to tell you, as somebody who may, for PepsiCo in this story, being engineers, for example, which I'm the farthest thing from, but if we were to bring materials like steel or capabilities in terms of designing a bridge that can withstand the rising waters, that's about all I bring. I don't know the need that you have in terms of when you need to, when the mothers or children are going across for school, or what kind of carts you may be using in terms of getting to market, or I don't know any of those kinds of details. I just know the kinds of aspects that I know. And on the other hand, the villagers knew exactly what they needed, but didn't have some of the materials. They had the will and the ability to put the handmade bridge together. So that to me is a place where our collective capabilities and collaboration can come together, but we can all also share a million examples of how the exact process goes awry, right? Where you start to build a bridge in the wrong place, or it's like, you know, there's all kinds of different ways that example is not repeated over and over because we fail to really listen and do that work together. But that's our hope, is to build bridges like that out of poverty.
Appreciate that analogy, Matt. Now, this, as a bridge builder, I want my bridge to withstand the rising water, right? So thank you for that. All right, so we're not ending. I want to be clear. Thank you, Nikki, for reminding us in the chat that We are going to break out into small breakout rooms. So those others who are not at the table with us necessarily, but in the room with us, we will get into small breakout rooms and really be able to hear from others. And then after, come back and really be able to harvest what we've heard from those breakout rooms and have a small closing. So we want to pivot to that, Nikki.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Devon. Thank you to all the table guests. I'm loving the conversation. And so at that point, just because we're transitioning into the next phase of Universal Table, so thank you so much, everyone that joined on the live stream. Sorry for the delay on getting it actually live. This is why we extended by 7 minutes the overall conversation as well, so you don't feel that you didn't get to enjoy the conversation like we did in the room. This being said, thank you, Maya, for handling the live stream.